What's up, guys? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's happening with the economic calendar moving forward, break down some very, very big things coming out for the week, not to mention Tesla news. But just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you are guaranteed 15 in total, not to mention an 8.1% APY on uninvested cash. The offer ends very soon in just a couple of weeks. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the market and Tesla. So, as you guys can see, Tesla pumped very, very nicely after earnings came out, running all the way up towards the 270s. However, instead of breaking through them, we saw Tesla reject, and since then it's been on a bit of a downtrend. It's not just Tesla, though, the whole market's been coming down. That's what's dragged Tesla down alongside other factors. So, the question is, what's going to happen for the week as we have the election coming up? Not to mention new pieces of data. So I want to talk about all of that first before I break down more details. Just know that right now Tesla's on a bit of a downtrend. It's been making lower lows almost every single day. And we're approaching this big support right over here near our 20 EMA at the 244 area, or at least I presume that the 20 EMA is going to be very close to 244 by tomorrow. So I think that that's going to be a very, very important area where Tesla could be visiting. So I'll break down more information about this once again in just a few minutes. Let's first talk about some data. Don't forget that today is Sunday. Daylight savings just ended, by the way. So if you have a clocks in your house, don't forget to turn the time back by 1 hour. So make sure you make those adjustments when it comes to all these times because I'm going to be going over the updated times. So tomorrow is going to be Monday, November 4th, 2024. At 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the 3 and 6 month bill auctions. That's very, very important for all of us. That might cause some volatility. But then don't forget that Monday is going to be a quiet day compared to what's about to come. For other factors out there, on Tuesday, it's going to be November 5th. Do not forget that we have some ISM services data in the morning. And then after the market closes, we have the one, the only presidential election race going on. This is going to be crazy. So we're going to find out, is it going to be Kamala Harris or Donald Trump as the next president of the United States? I expect a very, very big reaction, most likely by Wednesday, but we'll see if they finish counting all the ballots and everything by Tuesday night. Hopefully, they finish everything, and that gives us like the big update. So basically, on Wednesday, okay, Wednesday, we should have more insights on who's winning, who's most likely going to win, and everything. And by then, I'm expecting a very, very big move in the markets. We're going to be looking for a big reaction, a big pump, a big dump. We'll see about that. And we'll see how it goes. I personally don't know what's going to happen on Wednesday. It depends on the election, who wins, and how the market interprets everything. So make sure you're ready for that just to be safe. For Thursday, for Thursday, we have something else coming out. We not only have some jobs numbers, but we also have the FOMC meeting. So we have the meeting coming out, the rate hike or cut decision, not to mention Jerome Powell giving a speech. So FOMC is going to be on Thursday. Then expect a big reaction on Friday as we have the Michigan Consumer Sentiment data and the reaction to FOMC. So Tuesday through Friday are going to be pretty crazy days as we get very close to the election and FOMC. And Monday is going to be a more quiet day, so at least we just have like some volatility at 11:30 a.m. And that's pretty much it. There's not much data coming out for Monday. So keep that in mind, guys. Quiet Monday, and the rest of the week is going to be crazy thanks to the election, not to mention, excuse me, all the data and the FOMC meeting. For other factors out there, we have basically earnings. We have Berkshire Hathaway giving us some insights tomorrow. We're going to get more information about them tomorrow morning. Then we have Palantir after market close. For Tuesday, we have Supermicro announcing their earnings. Wednesdays when we have ARM and a few more. And then don't forget we have like Rivian and many other more like mid caps giving their earnings for like Thursday and Friday. So there's going to be some volatility thanks to earnings, but nothing too crazy. This is not as crazy as what we saw last week when we had big tech earnings. Just remember, guys, the majority of tech stocks sold off. We saw Meta sell off. We saw Microsoft sell off. Apple sold off. The majority of them did end up seeing some downside. I think it's very important to remember that because of the fact that that's what contributes to why the market was dipping alongside some GDP numbers and other factors like that. And there's also a lot of fear in the markets because of the election. Right now, we're neutral going into the election. We might get a little bit closer to fear, though, as we get very close to the election. So just keep that in mind because right now, momentum indicators are now at fear. We're getting very close to our 125 daily moving average on SPY. There's fear building within the markets. We also have the puts and call option ratio at fear. This is going up because more puts are being bought. There's more shorts in the markets. The VIX is breaking out right over here. We're on a bit of an uptrend as we break these highs. There's a gap to fill below. So will the VIX dip and then bounce, or will it start pushing? We'll have to wait and see. There's also going to be a big reaction depending on what happens during the election. For more news, there was some news that Amazon's founder, Jeff Bezos, has sold over $3 billion worth of Amazon shares, bringing his total stocks sales for the year to about $13 billion. This news might cause a little bit of a dip, but it's not that crazy. There's also news that came out involving Berkshire Hathaway. So their cash fortress is now at about $300 billion. Warren Buffett is continuing to sell stocks, holding cash right now. He's getting ready for something very, very big. He could be anticipating a sell off in the markets, which is why he's in cash right now, and he'll be buying the dips very nicely. He might know something, guys. He might just know something, right? He's arguably one of the most notorious investors of all time, and he's holding a bunch of cash because he could be foreseeing what's about to come. The same thing that I've been talking about, how the market has a correction coming eventually. Whether it's starting now or if it's early next year, there is something brewing, in my personal opinion. There's also been a lot of talk about how the Model Y Juniper is coming. Tesla is gearing up for a change. There's been a lot of talk about this. So, this is what reports are basically saying. I don't think Tesla's confirmed this yet, but there's been a lot of talk, especially with some potential sightings of the new design for it. So, it's going to be very nice. And I do believe Tesla will eventually do it. I just don't know if it's going to be next year. Many people are saying that it's going to be coming very, very soon, that we're going to be looking for new updates to it. So I'll be waiting to see on that if Tesla gives us some kind of update on the Juniper, if there's going to be like a new concept for it. Hopefully next year it comes out, but just know this is not actually confirmed by Tesla quite yet. Besides that, I didn't see too much news coming out. Tesla's volume is very slow right now. That's why Tesla's dipping. Volume was so high after earnings that Tesla spiked, but now it's slowing down. Tesla's dipping back down. 56 million is volume below average. It's only at about like 60% of the volume we typically get. And short volume is also going up a little bit. Piper Sandler gave Tesla an overweight rating. Barclays is kind of giving them an equal weight rating. And besides that, the price price ratio is dipping just a little bit as we're seeing some weakness on Tesla. Mondays tend to be green only about, let's just look at this, about 53% of the time. But don't forget, it's going to be a special Monday. This is the last Monday before the election. Then we also tend to see more volatility around 1 p.m. And also during the second to last hour of the day, we tend to see more volatility on Tesla. So with that being said, guys, that's it for my data. I just want to focus on the charts from this point on. What do I think is going to happen going into tomorrow? What is my prediction? Let's talk about all of that. So as far as Tesla goes, do not forget we have 250 as our resistance, 252 and 255 as the main resistance areas. We have support basically around, let me just double check this, 248. If that fails us, we'll be dipping closer to about 245 around that area, not to mention where our 20 EMA is going to be. That's actually going to be curling upwards close to 244. So 244 to 245 is going to be our next support below that. It also aligns with the confluence of support, which is where this imbalance is. So we'll see how Tesla responds to that. Those are your supply and demand areas right now, okay? Tesla's bearish. It's bearish, straight up just bearish. We pumped and rejected every single day for the past week. It's been looking very weak. The whole market has been doing that. So it's not just Tesla, and that's what's dragging Tesla down. So Tesla's very impacted by the market and the election and a lot of the fear that's building right now. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the morning we see a little bit of a pump and then a dump afterwards, because when you look at the 4-hour time frame or other time frames on Tesla, what you'll see is that we do have a tendency of doing the same thing. Let me show you. So look at what happened on Monday. Tesla pumped, then dumped. Tuesday, we kind of like opened flat. We dipped a bit, then rebounded a little bit. Wednesday, we pumped and dumped. Thursday, we pumped and dumped. Friday, we pushed a bit, then we dumped. Tomorrow, I wouldn't be surprised if we try to push a bit, then start dipping again. Our range is going to be between 252 and 246. I think Tesla might push for 250, maybe a little bit above that, 250 to 252. Then we could be rejecting, making our way back down to 246, if not 244 for a little bit of a dip. I think that's the most likely case for Tesla. We pump and dump. And I think that we're going to be range bound for the time being, but there is a risk of it dipping a little bit more because of the fact that the election's coming up. There might be a little bit of fear associated with that. So Tesla might try to push for 250 to 252 tomorrow morning. Then there's a risk of us dipping back down towards 246, and then eventually the 244 area near our 20 EMA. And if that fails us, we're looking for a bigger dump. But we'll have to see how things end up going depending on other factors. But for now, we look a little bit more bearish. If we were to break past 255, I would say there's a little bit of hope for a bounce, but I don't think it's going to happen like that. I presume we're going to just kind of like pop a little bit and start dipping lower. And right now, it looks like there's a little bit of fear associated with the election, which might lead to some downside for Tesla. So please keep that in mind. Okay, so there is going to be a risk of downside, especially as we approach 242. Keep that in mind, guys. We might see a little bit of a dip, a pop, and a drop as the most likely move for Tesla. For others out there, such as SPY, we essentially have the same thing going on. Notice that it rejected here, came back up, rejected, came back up, rejected, came back up, rejected hard, came back up, only to reject on Friday. So it's just rejection after rejection after rejection. Now, we need to get back above 575 to turn back up. Otherwise, we're at risk of dipping. We have 569 as our support, not to mention all the way down here around 565. So with these rejections in mind, we could pop a bit for 572.5 to 573 tomorrow morning, but I presume the trend is going to continue and we're going to likely continue to dip. Look at 572 and then 575 is our resistance areas. And then look at our support down here around 570, not to mention 568 and 566. So I think we're going to most likely get these rejections. I think that most likely that's what SPY is going to be doing. We could rebound a bit for 572, and then we might go a little bit higher before it starts dipping lower, but I do presume this imbalance will fill back down. So I think we pop a bit in the morning, back up to about the 572 area, maybe a little bit above that. But then there might be a sell off towards the end of the day again. We could be looking for a retest of 568. If our 50 EMA breaks near 568, I do think we could be approaching the lows down here, like around 565. So right now, the charts favor downside as the most likely case. Unless SPY holds above 572.5 and then 575, it could turn back up. But the chart currently is favoring the downside. The downside looks a lot stronger right now. And it's favoring that it wants to start dipping down to this imbalance. So if we do get these pops, I do presume 568 is coming, then eventually 565, and the downside looks more probable in my personal opinion. For ES, and then don't forget, guys, it's because we're approaching the election. You guys know how the election is just leads to uncertainty and fear. For ES, it's the same thing. Essentially, we have 5750s our support. We could attempt to rebound a bit before we start dipping lower. And then we have another support below that around 5730. And then this imbalance would take us all the way down towards 5690. So I think we're going to rebound a little bit in the morning, start pushing for basically 5775. If you reject here, we're looking for a move all the way down towards 5730 and eventually back down to this imbalance towards 5690. So I think there's going to be a little bit of a dip and a little bit of a pop in the morning before we start dipping lower towards 5750 or below for some downside move, and that's most likely what's going to end up coming. So watch to see if that ends up being the case or not. For Nvda, Nvidia has this resistance around 136.5, not to mention the gap fill for about 139. We also have support over here, which is where this imbalance is at around 132.8. If that fails us, expect this to be coming all the way down here towards 129. So what I think is going to likely happen is this. I think that Nvidia is going to most likely try to rebound a bit, try to get close to about the 137 area to 136.5, consolidate, then start dipping all the way down towards 132. I think that Nvidia still has some more downside potential because of this gap down here. That we still have a gap to fill at 127. There's another one at 116. So we'll see what happens with the election, but for the time being, it is dipping a little bit as we get closer to it. Look for a rebound in the morning before we continue to dip lower as the most likely cases. So just keep that in mind, guys. For Bitcoin, we're on a bit of a downtrend here, but one thing that's worth noting about Bitcoin is the fact that we are riding our EMAs nicely. So it's bouncing off its 20 EMA. So tomorrow, I think Bitcoin's going to push a little bit. I think the market's going to try to rebound in the morning, but it might get followed by some downside later on, which is the same trend we're seeing in the markets. Bitcoin's following the market as well. There's going to be a big reaction to the election, depending if we get a if someone wins or not. So we'll see. But I just want to say that this is what's most likely going on, at least for the time being. I think that there is a risk of this dipping a little bit lower. We could attempt to push for basically 71,000 before it starts dipping back down lower. So look for an attempt to get to 70,500 or a little bit above that before it starts dipping back down towards 68,236. If that fails us, we're dipping all the way down towards the 66,000 area. So look for a rebound for 70,000, then a move back down towards the support. That's the most likely case for Bitcoin, but get ready for that little pump that's coming. It might be a little bit of a push temporarily before anything else. For others out there, we have NQ. NQ is doing the same thing. Now we have this resistance around 20,300 and support at 20,050. We might rebound for basically 20,000 450 before it rejects and starts dipping back down towards 19,800. If that fails us, we're looking for a dip back down towards 19,600 for next support. So look for a rebound for 20,300, maybe a little bit above that before it starts dipping back down lower. Might be a little bit of a pop by about 100 points before it starts dipping, but this chart still remains more bearish. We might push for 20,200 to 20,300. Let me just clarify that before it rejects, and then we could be looking for a move down towards the 19,800s or below. Later on, especially if we lose 20,000, I do anticipate more downside as the most likely case. Don't forget, guys, the downside is still looking quite imminent to me, and I still presume that's going to most likely be what's coming. We have not 490 is our resistance, and 484 is our support on the QQQ. We might rebound for 488 to 490 before it continues to dip to 484. I think this imbalance is going to be retested, and eventually it's going to drag us down towards the 480 area. So look for some downside, most likely on the QQQ, a pop and drop, and we'll see how things end up going. For Apple, Apple's a little bit more bearish. We could attempt to push for basically 224 before it starts dipping back down for 220. And if that fails us, we're looking for a move back down to 217. Look for 224, then a rejection as the most likely cases, and we'll see how things end up going. For others out there, I want to call out. Let me start off with Neo. I want to call this out, guys, because there's something very, very nice brewing on this chart. As far as Neo goes, guys, just know that there is a very, very nice looking head and shoulders like structure. There's a left shoulder here. There's a head up here. Then there's like a right shoulder forming. It's a very, very clean setup. If we lose that 5 area, I do expect this to dump, especially down to these gaps. I think it's a good buying opportunity for the long term, not financial advice, but the long term is very bright for the company, despite the short term downwards pressures. But this is just a nice setup I wanted to call out just to give you guys like an idea. If you want to trade it or play around with it, it's your choice. But it's up to you. I just wanted to give you guys insight about that. So Netflix looks a little bit more bearish. We could be dipping back down to about 740 is the most likely case. I think we're just going to consolidate a bit, then start dipping. For a few more, let's go over. Let me just see. Celsius has its earnings, so just keep that in mind. This may continue to push for basically 32, maybe 32.5 before it rejects and starts dipping back down to 30. So a pump and dump are going to be the most likely cases, at least for this moving forward. In terms of others out there, such as Palantir, we look a little bit more bearish. We do have earnings, which will affect it, but I think it might retest 42. If we can't hold above 42.5, expect it to reject in that range and start dipping back down for 40 flat. So a pop and drop all the way down to 40 is going to be the most likely case. For Supermicro, we could be dipping back down towards 25. I think that it might continue to fall for 25 flat. We might rebound a bit, then start dipping for 25, and we'll see what kind of reaction we get. We could even dip below this just to be very, very safe. As far as Rivian goes, Rivian is looking a little bit more bearish. We have earnings coming out. We got to break past 10.5. Otherwise, we're at risk of coming back down towards 10. And we could even dip below that if this continues to fall. So I think 10 or below is likely coming. For SoFi is also looking a little bit weaker here. We have 11 as our resistance, and then we have the support all the way down here towards 10.5. So I think that SoFi has a tough resistance up above here, and it might slow down for this imbalance back down to 10.5. For the IWM Russell 2000, we pumped, dumped, pumped, dumped. It's just continuing to reject. We got to hold above 221. Otherwise, I see a risk of this coming back down for 218. So I think we kind of push a bit in the morning tomorrow, but then it's going to slowly turn back down to 218, maybe dip close to this imbalance down here around 216, approaching the election for a little bit of downside. The election could cause a bounce. We'll have to see about that. But for now, we do look a little bit more bearish. For AMD, we look more bearish. We're looking for an attempt to get back down towards 138 as the most likely case. Still looks more bearish to me. 140 is a nice support. It might try to rebound a bit off that before it starts dipping back down to 138. Coin is more bearish. Might try to push for 185 before it starts dumping back down for 180 or below. For Amazon, we are pushing for basically 200 as resistance. It's a tough resistance. We did reject the last time we hit that. We'll see if we break this or not. It is very, very tough. If we don't hold above 200, we're looking for basically around this 197 area or so support. If that fails us, we're going to be dipping back down for 194, so give this the time it needs. For Meta is also looking a little bit more bearish. I do see a risk of this dipping back down towards 559 very soon. Might retest 572, then start dipping back down to 559, so keep that in mind. Microsoft is also starting to dip a little bit more, so don't forget about that. We are below our 200 EMA, so if it does not break above 412, we're looking for a dip back down, a little push and a dip back down towards the 402 area. So keep that in mind, guys. There is a risk of Microsoft dipping a bit, despite the fact that, because of the way earnings came out. Google/Alphabet could pop a bit to about 173.5 before it starts dipping back down to 170, then 168. So keep that in mind as well. The last thing I'm going to talk about is the VIX. The VIX is starting to push. There is a gap to fill below. So if we do get a little dip in the VIX, it could be because the market's going to push a little bit. But ultimately, there's another gap to fill on the VIX well above. And the VIX does have some more upside potential because of the market potentially correcting. So my view of the market is simple. We are looking a little bit more bearish overall. We might pop in the morning tomorrow before we see more downside again as the day goes on, even for stocks like Tesla. There could be more downside as we get very close to the election. But after the election, that's going to be the real move. Will the market see a big pump or will it continue to dump? We'll just have to wait and see. With that being said, I appreciate you guys so much for listening. Please have a great day. I'll be back tomorrow before the market opens for another update. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys very soon. Have a good weekend and peace out.